Well, today is the 19th of April 2019, and it's for the fifth day in a row. London, the UK capital, has been disrupted by Extinction Rebellion protesters, and well done, guys. Put many, hundreds of arrests, but more importantly, I think lots and lots of publicity. They've really dragged this issue to the front page, and they've been forced to do so. They've been compelled to do so because politicians haven't given climate change due weight and consideration. This isn't just about being stuck on Brexit for the last few months. This is 30 years of not only ignoring it but continuing to play, not only give lip service but also to take money, whether it's the Tory party in this country or I think more notoriously the Republicans in the USA, to actually take money from the oil companies and and other polluters and emitters and extractors, and carry out policy in their interest, which is where one of the failings of the system comes in. I think we're going to jump from that to another big, if not an extinction type event, but certainly a big troublesome event, and that is that another crash, another recession, and certainly another consequent crash is on the horizon. Analysts are talking about next year. Now again, that's capitalism. The lead is failing. It failed in 2008. Political leaders haven't learned the lesson sufficiently. They haven't made regulatory policy to try and control it. The financial sector has continued to grow proportionately as a percentage of the economy. I think in the US it's gone from like 8% to about 25%. It was 8% in the 1970s, it's about 25% now. Whereas say like a sector like manufacturing has pretty much gone the other way, and so what it means is you've got all these kind of paperless traders and less collateral when things do go wrong. And this is late capitalism that we're talking about now, so economic and environmental failure, and they are linked. And I think we have to make the link that this is a system that's not functioning. So whether it's the oil companies or the banks or the military industrial complex of the UK and the US, they all want their big slice of the pie. But at what cost? Well, I think it's plain to see what cost. The cost is environmental. The cost is in terms of pollution, extinction, extraction, climate emissions. The cost is instability in terms of another massive economic crash, which looks what's likely, perhaps not on the scale of 2008, but certainly very severe, and as severe as any other, probably the second most severe crash we'll have seen in our lifetimes. The military and industrial complex is, there's a core group of people who've got linked interests and are making money out of war. The banks too, of course. The banks, and nobody is stopping that. We've had, even after Iraq and interventions like that, a line still hasn't been drawn in the sand. It's perhaps not the best metaphor to use for war in the Middle East, but the line hasn't been drawn to say, well, we've got to stop doing this. We've got to pursue more peaceful and political means and actually support people. If we believe in democracy, then support people. And again, North Africa, the people of North Africa have shown that in the last week or two. They've shown that they've toppled two leaders in Sudan and in Algeria, two long-term leaders. So there's, again, that's kind of nullified this need to go in, basically carry out sort of the policies of imperialism, either through the US or through UK military forces. part of what is, part of the process of this decay and this unraveling, of course, is the type of leaders that we now have. Trump is obviously seen as the most notorious, but he's not alone. I mean, in other countries where certainly where economic growth has failed to materialise, or economic equality has failed to materialise, you have these pretty much fascistic sort of leaders, whether that's Bolsonaro in Brazil or Duterte in the Philippines, who quite openly really want to go back to going back to those sort of bad old days of the 60s and 70s, military dictatorship. And of course, I think there were big problems with regimes in India and China as well. Putin is not quite as big a bogeyman as we like to make him out, but I think at some point, that is creating instability in the world. And I think all of these things, all of these connections are being made. If it's when the economy goes wrong, when there are recessions and depressions, war follows. When you have big countries, and certainly big pretenders like China coming on the scene, just as we did 100 years ago with Germany and the US, war seems to be an almost, not an inevitable consequence, but something that follows. It's a corollary of those circumstances. I think with the environmental problems, there's resource depletion, there'll be resource scarcity again, which lead to war. And as Einstein said, you can't say, as Einstein said, he didn't quite know what sort of weaponry World War III would be fought with, but World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones. It's a situation we have to avoid completely. And so perhaps, I'm catastrophizing, but I think, this is all built on solid rational analysis. You go back and look at what happened post 1929, the crash. You look what happened in the lead up to the First World War, 14-18. What happened in that period, and the lead and the build up to the Second World War, 39 to 45. The environmental situation is something extremely new, but already, that has led to instability too, and it is already leading to instability, whether it's in the Middle East, whether it's in Bangladesh, whether it's in in parts of sub-Saharan Africa, whether that's in Central America too, in like Mexico and Honduras, and all those migrants who are actually going to the wall, and a lot of them are coming from drought-stricken areas. So we are pulling together the pieces, folks. I think there's a lot. I hope I haven't bombarded people with the density of detail. It's very difficult to avoid doing so, and I think what I always encourage people to do is go looking around the internet, because it's an amazing source of information. Go looking around your libraries, find some interesting stuff, find inspirational stuff, find stuff that answers some of your questions and poses new ones for you. I think we've always got to be looking and digging and working out together, where do we go from here, because although we can use history, we can use the study of the past, in many ways we're in very, very new territory, and we have to find these things out for ourselves. So anyway, take care now, and speak to you next time.